Okay, hello and welcome to the video. My name is Wade Smith, and this video is about the fact that UFC fighters very often, and people might not realize this who aren't black belts or at least a brown belt, but UFC fighters very often flat out do not know what they're doing in a ring. And one of the most common occurrences that really gets my goat is when they catch the other guy's foot on a roundhouse kick, and they catch the other guy by the foot out of the air, and they don't know what to do with his foot. So then a second or two later, they release his foot. No, buddy, you're supposed to know what to do with their foot when you catch their ankle out of the air. You're supposed to put them in the front figure four ankle lock, and that's the end of the fight. So, unless you guys are paid not to use the front figure four ankle lock, which I strongly suspect you are, you guys just either flat out don't know what you're doing, or you're literally paid not to put submissions on one another. Because I am not lying, it's no longer there, but a couple years ago, the version of the World Unified Rules that the UFC was using specifically said that certain locks were banned just to prevent the fight from being over in 10 seconds or less. It said, and I quote, "We want to artificially extend fights beyond 10 seconds," end quote. All right. So I know they either they're intentionally not winning the fight, or they're just that bad of fighters that they don't know what the front figure four ankle lock is, and how to use it. And I've seen one figure four ankle lock used in the UFC in the past 25 years. One, and it won the fight, by the way. Uh, they don't know what wrist locks are. I win against black belts by putting them in wrist locks and kicking their guts out while they're wrist locked. That's the number one way that I beat black belts in full contact sparring. Is they punch at me, especially if they throw a hook punch. I'm going to catch a hook punch. I can block a jab, I can block a cross punch, and I can block a hook punch so effectively that I'm going to catch it out of the air, and I'm going to put you in a wrist lock, either the front wrist lock or the full wrist lock or a reverse wrist lock, depending on exactly how I time the block and catch. And once I get you in any of those three locks, the fight's over because I can just kick and knee your guts out over and over and crank down and kick and crank down and kick and crank down and kick. And either you're going to tap out or the ref's going to stop it on unanswered strikes. I've never seen anyone in the UFC fight like that because they don't know how to fight like that. That's why I don't respect them. I might be 45 years old and sick, but I could probably still kick most of their butts in a real fight because they flat out do not know basic technique. And I consider those to be yellow belt level techniques because I, in fact, was taught that at yellow belt or ninth Q level in Ishinru Karate. The front wrist lock is in a full wrist lock and reverse wrist lock are three of the first 8 submissions I ever learned. And they're probably the 3 most important submissions you can use against another black belt or brown belt. In 2016, I was a member of the Gracie United Jiu Jitsu gym down the street, and Michael, whose last name I don't know, was a full time professional fighter with over 20 wins. And I tapped him out 2 consecutive times in rolls, three out of 4 rolls, and 2 consecutive times in rolls with the front wrist lock 2 times, and the disarmer the third successful time that I tapped him out because he tapped me out with a disarmer one time, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I know how to reverse this." So I just haven't done it in a really long time, and so I was like, "So put it on me again." So I let him put the disarmer on me a second time, and then I got out of it because I suddenly remembered how to get out of it, and then I reversed it and put it on him and tapped him out with it as armor. But we did full rolls, and with me starting from guard position and him starting to pass my guard, and each time when he tried to pass my guard, I simply caught him in a front wrist lock and tapped him out. And I'm not even a good ground fighter by the standards of my old sensei. Like I suck at ground fighting, and I tapped out a second degree Gracie black belt who had 20 professional wins 3 times. I don't even consider myself good at grappling. Compared to what Sensei could do to me, I'm a noob. And he would laugh at them. I mean, he would absolutely, utterly destroy them. Uh, Kicks. I don't know about you, but I was taught that a kick should be 4 times as powerful as a heavyweight punch, and it turns out my front thrust kick is, or push kick, that some people call it a push kick, some people call it a thrust kick. It turns out that my front thrust kick is in fact 4 times as powerful as Mike Tyson's right cross in his prime. And so when I was taught that, it turns out that that's exactly right. All right, but according to Wikipedia, not Wikipedia, Google, watch this. According to Google.com, if I ask it, uh, how many pounds of force is in a professional fighter's front push kick, Google tells me a professional fighter's front push kick can generate force ranging from 466 to 7,790 newtons. This translates to a force between approximately 104 pounds and 1,735 pounds. That's wrong. I have actually tested mine, and mine is 6,000 pounds. So, which is 4 times greater, and that's not even as strong as a punch, which is completely wrong. And the reason I know how strong mine is because I did it by calculation by kicking a heavy standing water bag, a 225-pound standing water bag, airborne 10 feet across a room. And then I calculated the bare minimum force it would take to do that on an ideal trajectory of 45 degrees angles, which I probably did not achieve an ideal trajectory of 45 degrees angles. So, if anything, my kick was actually stronger than 6,000 pounds. But I used an AI and a calculator to actually calculate it because I know how to do the calculation. Um, and I checked it with an AI, and the AI helped me get exactly the right number, and it was 6,000 some odd pounds. All right. So if it's true that the average pro fighter is only generating 1,700 pounds on their push kick, then I have nothing to gain by fighting them because I'd get in trouble. I'd end up killing them if I hit them as hard as I can kick a water bag. I'd break a rib or break their back or something if I hit them that hard. And to give you some context, of course, I'm supposed to be 185 to 205 pounds, around 185 pounds, really. Um, and Gabriel Varga is, I think, 135-pound kickboxing champion. I think he's been kickboxing champion of 6 different divisions altogether, but in the world. But I saw him trying to demonstrate what he thought was power working out on a bag. And I understand that he's 50 pounds lighter than my ideal weight class, so that matters. But I told him, you must be joking that you kick that bag and it barely moves. And when I kick a bag, the same type of bag, I can send it airborne 10 feet across a room. I was like, is that all you got or something? Because my little sister can kick harder than that, and I'm not even lying. So I'm not impressed with professional fighters. And I know there are exceptions. I mean, Brock Lesnar is an exception to this, and so is Diego Sanchez. But generally, you have to be rich and have sponsors to become a pro fighter because they don't give poor people a chance unless they're absurdly phenomenal athletes. Like, you have to be rich or have sponsors because you don't make money in the fights, and the money they do make in the entry level fights, I'm talking about, they only get paid a few $1,000s a fight. Only the ones that are on cable and pay per view get paid $250,000 a fight, which is actually too much because it doesn't make sense to pay an athlete more than you pay carpenters and doctors and lawyers. But at entry level, you only actually make about $1,000 a fight, which basically isn't even enough to pay your training staff. Um, but those guys on UFC, at least right now, are overrated. I don't know what else to say. Like, you know, if they're not top five, I don't respect them at all. To be honest with you, I really don't. But like, I was taught Japanese jiu-jitsu, which is basically used for disarming another samurai of their sword and breaking their arm and leg in a real fight to the death. Is the style of martial arts that I was trained in. Um, so I don't find what they do in UFC like they miss opportunities to finish one another off and go for inferior ways of finishing one another off. And I'm like, you idiot. You could have done any number of ankle locks right here because you called his kick out of the air and you passed it up and didn't do it. Or you caught hold of his arm that time and didn't do anything with it. And catching the ankle out of the air happens every other MMA fight, every other time, and they never do anything with it because they don't know it or it's secretly banned. Because I've checked the new World Unified Rules, and it does not ban that specifically. But unless they're paid to lose or something, it's the only thing I can think because they're not finishing one another off at the earliest opportunity. All right, I think I've beat this dead horse now. It's for 13 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and end the video. And if anybody watches this, thank you.